Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this evening's Spring Campus Forum for Parents and Families. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I'm Eric Lasan, Senior Associate Director for Parent Engagement. Before we begin, let me share a few logistical items. This session will operate much like a webinar. We've taken the questions submitted by you in advance and built them into our panelists' remarks. In addition, Abby Kale, Associate Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement, and Paul McKean, Assistant Director of Engagement Communications, will be monitoring additional questions submitted via the Q&A tab and making sure those questions get to our panelists. The microphone on your computer will not be active during this meeting. Our technical support is Paul McKean also. He's doing double duty tonight. You can use the same Q&A function if you're having technical difficulties as well. And Abby or Paul will be in touch with you to help by phone. Our conversation this evening will be hosted by Lisa Landreman. We're also joined by Ruth Feingold, Don Thomson, Mandy Devereux, Rob Passage, and Lisa Holliday. Our panelists are excited to review our fall semester, share some lessons we learned, and provide updates on student and academic affairs as we look forward to the rest of this semester and beyond into the summer and fall. Now I'll introduce our host this evening. Dr. Landreman joined Willamette this past July as Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. In this role, she provides leadership to the Division of Student Affairs aimed at fostering healthy, inclusive learning communities and supporting students in the discovery of their passions with strategies to maintain their overall well-being and a commitment to care for the world around them. Lisa oversees areas including athletics, campus recreation, residence life and housing, student activities, and the Bishop Health and Wellness Center. Some of Dr. Landreman's prior experiences include serving as the Assistant Vice President and Dean for Student Life at Roger Williams University, as the Associate Dean of Students at McAllister College, and as an adjunct faculty in the Leadership, Policy, and Education program at the University of St. Thomas. Lisa has sailed on 3 voyages with Semester at Sea as well. Thanks, Lisa, for leading this evening's forum. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Great. I would say it's wonderful to see you all. Unfortunately, we can't see you, but I'm glad to know that you're all here and to have this first opportunity to welcome you to our spring semester. I think we'll begin first by having each panel introduce themselves. And so I'll call someone and just ask a panelist to call on the next person. So the first person on my screen is Rob Passage.
Good evening, everyone. Rob Passage. I'm the Director of Athletics here at Willamette, and I will pass it on to Don.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Don Thomson. I'm the Director of our Bishop Wellness Center, our Student Health and Counseling Center here on campus. Mandy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mandy Devereux. I'm the Director of Career Development for the College of Arts and Sciences. I will pass it to Lisa Holliday.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Holliday. I'm Associate Dean of Students and Director of Student Activities, and I'll pass it to Ruth.
Hello, I'm Ruth Feingold. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Well, we have a wonderful agenda today, just with some folks who are going to update you on some exciting things that are happening in our spring. But as Eric said, maybe wanted to highlight a few things from our fall. And so I know it feels like a long time ago, but we're certainly wanting to make meaning of the lessons learned and celebrate many of our successes. And the first being that we feel really proud about how our students and our staff and our faculty, our community really persevered through really what was, I'm going to use the word, unprecedented times, difficult times with COVID, with wildfires, with smoke. I hate to remind everyone of some of those challenges, but the good news is that we really made it through and still were able to salvage a really wonderful educational experience under the circumstances. And I say that for the students who lived on campus, when we surveyed students about what their experience was to see how we could, make it better, we were pleased to learn that overwhelmingly the students who lived on campus felt that they were safe, that they felt validated, that they felt included by overwhelming majority. And when I think about the challenges that we faced and some of the restrictions that we had, that students, we were still able to feel that being part of the community was really important. And when we reached out to the students who were studying remotely, about 172 students that we were able to reach out to, they appreciated that connection and that many were still very engaged in the campus community, as challenging as it was for others. When we looked at some of our COVID mitigation strategies and asked students, how do you think we're doing? Of all of the pieces of the WellU agreement and asking how students thought their peers and the rest of the community were handling those. Again, 7 out of the 8 mitigation strategies people thought we were doing pretty well at. So it's not that we were perfect. I'm sure we've heard stories of concerns about maybe someone not wearing a mask or some of the challenges of not maintaining social distance, but overall people felt pleased with what was happening and felt supported and felt like Willamette's response in retrospect was a good one. I think most importantly, what we're proud of is that we had very low case counts of COVID, and that those that we did have were handled in a way that were contained, that we did not have evidence of any kind of community spread, which is pretty remarkable, again, for a residential community. So we look at those as markers of success. I know we recently had a pretty major challenge with the power outages and heat, and that was certainly challenging for our community. I think overall, we believe that students now should have power. We had heat on campus, we had access to food. We were able to make some food available for those who didn't have it come midweek. And so again, showing our resilience as a community, that despite these challenges, we're still committed to the Willamette experience. So I think that's what I'm going to say by way of summary. We will have time for questions, but after everyone has had an opportunity to say a few words, I think the next on the agenda is Ruth Feingold, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Hi, glad to talk to you all. I will say that one of the questions that has been coming in very regularly is about commencement. And I know commencement is extremely important. I'm kind of a commencement junkie myself. I have been reading the names for graduates for about 6 years now. No, more than that, different institutions, about 8 years now. And it's my favorite day of the year. Having said that, I think it is probably extremely unlikely that we are going to be able to do a traditional full in-person commencement ceremony this spring, with all of the graduates and all of the faculty and staff and all of their family and friends present together on the quads. This does not seem like it is going to be within public health guidelines nor within common sense. Having said that, we are working with seniors to try and find out what elements of commencement are the most important to them. Is it most important to them that they be able to shake the president's hand, possibly while wearing gloves? Is it most important that they have their families here, that they're able to celebrate with their friends? We're considering options including department level graduation ceremonies, a graduation ceremony that is live for the students with families and friends being able to watch on a video format. We think that we will be able to do something that is more live than what we did last year, which was simply a video, but stay tuned for more information on that. We are coordinating across academic affairs, student affairs, and the president's office, which hosts commencement, to figure out the best possible way to do that this year. We have also not forgotten last year's graduates and are still looking forward to trying to celebrate with them in person, although they were very adamant that they did not want a combined celebration with another class. So we will have to do something probably in conjunction with an alumni reunion at some point. Other questions that have come in have been about the calendar. The academic calendar for next year is posted online for next year and the year following. And at this point, we do not see any reason to have to deviate from the posted calendar to make accommodations for COVID as we did this year. This does mean we had one question about whether we had learned that sending students home at Thanksgiving was the best possible option. And I would say that it is a really lovely option. It does not work particularly well with other aspects of the university calendar. Starting too early in the summer means that students who who have jobs over the summer have fewer weeks in which to work. This year, we sent students home at Thanksgiving and had final exams remotely, which is not a particularly great option. Most years, we have 2 full weeks of classes as well as a study period and final exams after the Thanksgiving break. And that is what we're going to be doing again next fall. So barring any extremely unusual events, we do anticipate having the schedule as posted. You can find that on the registrar's website. If you go and you see the main calendar in the center of the page, if you go up to the top right-hand corner for more information, you can find calendars for next year and the year after. We are also not planning on changing the calendar this spring. I know there was some concern about the fact that we had 3 canceled days due to the power outages and whether or not this would then take away spring break. One of the reasons why we limited the canceled classes to only 3 days is to ensure that we were still within a margin of comfortable error where we could in fact keep spring break where it was, keep study days where they were. If we canceled any more classes than that, we would really run into having to add extra days to the calendar, which is not particularly good for anyone. So the spring calendar is good. Next year's calendar is good. We are also looking forward to having, again, cautiously, an entirely in-person year next year for classes. This is our goal. That always, of course, it has the potential to change, but as we see positivity rates in Oregon below 2%, as we see cases nationally declining by 40%, and the likelihood of a large number of people being vaccinated by or over the summer, I think we can be really enthusiastically looking forward to an in-person fall, while retaining some of the things that we have learned about the possibility of some remote education from this year in order to expand our students' opportunities to take classes at other institutions and subjects that we can't necessarily offer here. So I'm actively working on partnerships with our Northwest 5 peers, University of Puget Sound, Whitman College, Lewis and Clark, and Reed, to have some cross-offering of classes between the institutions. And you can stay tuned to hear more about that. I hope that everybody's classes are going well this spring. We did have one question from a parent who was disappointed because her student ended up with all 4 remote classes when she had hoped for in-person classes. We did create the number of in-person and remote sections based on what students said they wanted when we surveyed them in the fall. Some students were very clear that they wanted remote classes, and in order to provide the options for students who are studying remotely, we created about 40% of upper division classes remote and about 25% of lower division classes remote. Again, this was in line with what students said they wanted. Any individual student's schedule may have ended up looking different than that. We really hope that students got what they wanted and they had months to work with us if they didn't get what they wanted. I'm very sorry if that has happened to any of your students and that they're not happy with the mixture of what they had. In this, as in everything, I encourage them to be proactive, to talk with their advisors, to talk with their professors, to talk with me if necessary in order to make sure that as they set up their schedule for the fall, they're happy with what they have and it contributes towards their graduation. I think at this point, I should probably stop my little spiel and pass this on to, I think Mandy is next, talking about career development. Some really exciting stuff in career development.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we have a lot of exciting things going on. So reflecting on fall, myself and my staff, we offered appointments to students remotely, 30 and 60-minute appointments. But in COVID, we realized how important it was for students to have the chance to connect with professionals, specifically employers and alumni. So we had the opportunity in collaboration with alumni relations in our professional schools, Willamette Law and Willamette MBA, to launch a tool that probably is most simply described as LinkedIn for Willamette. So it's called WooConnect. And what essentially we do is have a lot of alumni who want to help our students, provide them insight into careers, professional mentoring, advice, and we have them sign up on WooConnect and connect with students across a variety of industry areas and interests, professional schools, and a couple of affinity groups that we have. So that tool just launched in January. We have close to 500 active students and alumni in there. which are able to connect in a more personal way. So the alums have already offered to have conversations. So it's a pretty accessible way for students, especially, when we're not able in terms of career to go to networking events and things like that, a very friendly community that our students are able to connect to. And that's across the entire university, including our professional schools. We also, in the fall, were approved to hire 2 new staff members. So we are active in our recruiting and moving into hiring our finalists for a new position, which is called Career Advisor for the Rengen Deloitte Pathway Program. This advisor will be hired to work specifically with our underrepresented students. And we are honing in on finalists right now. So this is a brand new position to campus, and one that will serve the unique needs of our underrepresented students as they explore how their identity shapes their career and what they want to do professionally. And we'll also get to hire our first career community program director. So this is a career advisor that will work specifically with our business and entrepreneurship community. So we have a new major, a new minor at Willamette, business. So this person will work with our business majors and minors, also our 3-2 students, and collaborate with Willamette MBA on ensuring that our business students are having a differentiated but also equally supported career development experience while they attend Willamette. So those positions will be onboarded late spring or into the summer, so that they will be on board for next year when students return to campus. But for this spring is hiring season. So we have a very much experienced an uptick of appointments. So we've seen, I ran stats, I think we've had almost 700 appointments since October. So it's just every month keeps going up and up to where we are almost seeing the same number of appointments at this point that we did when we were in person. Part of that is leadership apps, and then part of it is just that hiring season and getting our graduates ready. But we're also teaching 2 career courses. One of them is new. One of them that we're teaching now is career decision making. And then that will be followed by job and internship search strategies. The final, I guess, good news that I have to share here is, as we help our students explore careers and things that they would like to do to explore their own career interests, we also every spring open up 8 different internship funds. These go to support students who are doing low or unpaid internships. And it is my goal every year to give away as much of that money to students as possible. So the deadline for that is students can apply for funding by the end of April, and we'll be promoting that really pretty broadly in the next, really we start in March promoting that to students so they have a lot of time to apply for the funds. But we know students are eager to get experience, and we've seen employers doing internships as they typically would. Some of them are starting remote or virtual, or maybe continuing that way with maybe moving in person. Some of them are doing in person, but we've certainly seen a lot more internship opportunities this summer as compared to last summer. So we anticipate giving away all of those funds. That is the end of my segment, and I will pass it over to Lisa Holliday.
Thanks, Mandy. Hi, everyone. I know that there have been some questions out there about what's happening on campus and in terms of activities and our out of classroom experience. I know that Willamette, we've been known for having a really vibrant, active student body with, we've had traditionally over 100 clubs and organizations, lots of student-run initiatives, passionate students out there in the community as well as on campus. And so it has been difficult to rethink student activities during this time and try to find activities for students to do when we've been under some pretty strict guidelines in terms of how many students can gather. And we know that students also have Zoom fatigue from classes and whatnot. So there are some things that are happening though that we're excited about. We've been offering both virtual as well as in-person events. Some examples of things that we've been doing in person, our outdoor program has started up again. We've been offering some community service, not only in the community, but also some service to go where you can do service on campus and put packets together or care packages, things like that. We're also starting to offer some limited intramurals. And then some virtual activities that we've been doing are things like speakers and comedians and trivia nights, but also we've started something called Willamette Wednesdays. And the program that we had today, we had our university chaplain talk about planning a backpacking trip in the Grand Canyon. And so we have another staff member later that's going to be talking about how to ferment vegetables. So trying to make it interesting, as well as Tea Time Tuesdays is being sponsored by Campus Recreation. They're offering a variety of campus recreation type topics, from getting outdoors to being more active. And so much of what we're planning right now is really dependent on what we're allowed to do. So we're not planning too far in advance, and we're hoping that things will continue to change and loosen up. But the clubs are also continuing to meet. And so I would encourage, your student, if they haven't joined a club, especially if they are maybe a new student, newer to Willamette, to check out the club offerings that we have and try to get hooked into a meeting or maybe even a small in-person gathering. We also have lots of leadership opportunities. Mandy alluded to that a little bit, that all the leadership positions that are going to be available for next year, the applications are out right now. And so would encourage your student, if they haven't, to check out Handshake, which is our online job board, see about all the opportunities that are available, whether it be working with first-year students, whether it be working in a specific area like community service, or ASWU, which is our student government. The elections process is starting for that. So lots of opportunities. And then I guess I would just say that we've heard that some students are hesitant to participate in events, maybe because of the Zoom fatigue, or maybe there's some social anxiety there. And so we're really trying to offer a wide variety of activities, whether it be in the residence halls or otherwise. And so hopefully we can provide something for your student that will keep them active and hopefully meet some new students along the way. So next up is Dawn from Bishop Wellness Center.
Hi, everybody. So I promise I will speak to some vaccine updates and some testing updates. We got quite a few questions about that. But before that, following up on what Dean Feingold and Lisa had mentioned, the good news here is that, similar to the rest of the country, Oregon is seeing pretty significant drops in case rates and hospitalizations and deaths. We are currently at levels that we haven't seen since the early fall of last year. And so we're quite heartened by that. In Oregon, each county is assigned by the Public Health Authority a risk level. And since December, Marion County, which is where Salem and Willamette is, has been in the extreme risk category, and it has been evaluated every couple of weeks since December. What that means is that there's some pretty strict guidelines that govern a lot of what we're able to do. The good news is that just yesterday, we've hit the right metrics, and the governor announced yesterday that starting on Friday, Marion County is going to be moving from the extreme category to the high category. What this means for your students is that there are significant new opportunities. Particularly, this means we can have limited in-person dining. That means we can open up our primary cafeteria again with, I think, 25% capacity. But that is a significant shift. Also means our on-campus bistro coffee shop is going to be able to open up a little bit. And our athletics facility, our Sparks Fitness Center, is also going to be opened up with a little bit more capacity than we have been able to offer. So those are really, really encouraging signs. Talk a little bit about testing. So we have in this semester offered a number of testing options. We specific to our student athletes, and Rob's going to talk a little bit more about our athletics competitions shortly, but we tested all of our athletes upon arrival to campus. We continue to offer diagnostic testing, so diagnostic testing for people who are symptomatic and are known close contacts. And importantly, we've instituted a surveillance testing program this year or this semester, excuse me, whereby we send out a random email selection to all of our students, both undergraduate and graduate students, and inviting them in to take a test. It's been going quite well, actually. So we're getting a pretty good return on that. We're very, very thankful for our students' cooperation. I can say to date, and I feel like I need to knock on wood when I do this, but to date, all of those tests continue to be negative. But of course, that is of course a snapshot in time, and it doesn't get, it is not a pass to change any of our behaviors or anything like that. But that is some good news. Some questions are coming up about the vaccine. In Oregon, the Oregon Health Authority sets the vaccine sequencing. The theme that, if you're watching the news at all, is nationwide supply shortage, right? And that is absolutely what we're seeing in Oregon. The weather nationally last week complicated a little more of the shipping of those vaccines. In Oregon, the people who have been eligible and are currently eligible for vaccines are frontline healthcare workers, the K through 12 educators, and depending on your age, older folks. So starting this Monday, this past Monday, it started at 80, went to 75 the next week. And on Monday, it's people 70 and older became eligible. Lots of questions are coming up about when our students might be eligible. I really don't see that happening in this spring semester. The rollout, unfortunately, from the federal level to the states has been much slower than we had hoped. It is happening, and really, really thankful for that. But really, the way we're seeing this is most of our students will likely in Oregon not be eligible until the summer. And at that point, we expect much greater access and availability of the vaccine. So we really have sort of three distinct periods, right? We have the spring semester where access to the vaccine for most of our students is going to be pretty limited, and as set by the health authority. Summer, when students mostly will return home, where access, I fully expect, will pretty dramatically expand. And then fall semester, where we will then be hopefully welcoming back a student body with a much higher vaccination rate, which is, I think, really going to allow us to do things differently in the fall. I'm very hopeful about the fall. I mean, certainly it's not going to be a switch, right? You've heard that term lots of times. We're going to be slowly turning things on, but I am quite hopeful for the fall. So I'll stop there and I'll pass it over to Rob with some athletics updates.
Okay. Thanks, Don. I appreciate that. Yeah, and we have some news in athletics, which is exciting after a fall where our coaches and our student athletes were pretty creative around finding ways to train. This past Saturday, we played our first athletic competition since March 8th of 2020. And so almost a year since we hosted an intercollegiate athletic competition. So it was exciting to do that. And we have a few more contests coming up this weekend, and then hopefully many more as we go through this spring. And so as we do that, we're following some very strict protocols set in place by the NCAA, the Northwest Conference, of which we're a member, and then obviously state, local, and federal guidelines. And to answer the big question that I've been getting lately is, can we come and watch games? And so the one thing that I can tell you now is unfortunately right now, no. Guidance from the state and from our conference, and that's all 9 schools in the Northwest Conference, is that no spectators are allowed. We are hopeful as we go through the spring, and as Don's alluded to and some others have alluded to, as restrictions lessen within the states, that could be a possibility. But right now, we are asking that folks follow along on woobearcats.com and watch. Most of our contests will be streamed live and then also available on replay. And for right now, that is the only way for folks to watch. So we will keep you updated if any of that changes. And if you have questions about schedules or anything that's going on, that's all available on our website. And we're hoping that we can continue to have what can be as normal a return to spring, although we'll be playing a lot of sports this spring. We're excited to be back and going.
Thanks everyone for those updates. A couple of questions coming in. One is about what I think someone may have heard Ruth or someone say spring break. And to be clear, we are not calling what we're calling our break a spring break. We will have a 2-day break, March 25th and 26th. But I have to say, and you'll hear this, and our students are going to start hearing this messaging, we're really encouraging people not to travel. Again, similar to what we did in the break in the fall, we really are encouraging people to stay local. That traveling and coming back is where we see spread, is where we see, and even though things are getting much better and the numbers are low, we'd like to keep them that way. So as a result, as Lisa said, we're trying to come up with activities to happen on campus. I think it's also going to be much needed downtime. The hope is that it will continue to get warmer. I'm new to the West Coast, so I believe it's much more temperate in March than from where I come from. And so I anticipate we'll be able to have some outdoor activities and just some much needed probably break time at then. I don't know if Lisa or Ruth, you want to say anything else about the spring break? I'm sorry, our break period, our non-spring break.
I did want to note that we have an additional 2-day period this spring when there are no classes for the Student Scholarship Recognition Day. Usually that takes place over 1 day. We're stretching it out over 2 days, and that occurs in late April. So students will have, in addition to their 3-day unexpected break from classes during our recent power outages, they will also have those 2 days in March and the 2 days in April.
Mm-hmm. And Ruth, there's been a question about finals in the spring. Can you explain how those work?
Just like normal was the question. Anything more
Meaning
specific?
that different than for first year parents, like finals were before.
Oh.
Where they were home.
Yeah, no, we're planning to have in-person finals on campus. The only reason why we sent students home for finals in the fall was so that we could send them home at Thanksgiving and not have them come back after Thanksgiving. But since there's no reason for them to go home before the end of the term this spring, they're going to be staying on campus, they're going to be studying, and they'll be taking their finals here.
Mm-hmm. So what that will mean is that students will be allowed to stay in the residence halls through 24 hours after their last final. So that means that the residence halls will close May 9th at noon. So by May 9th at noon, that's, should be ample time for everyone's last finals. If your student has finals that end earlier, we'd like them to leave within 24 hours of their last final. We don't have summer housing. So there are no plans for summer housing. And so students do need to go home or find alternative places to stay in the summer. The only students that are allowed to stay longer are students who've been approved to stay to participate in graduation, and people who might have traditionally played in the band or volunteered. Because we don't exactly know what our graduation is looking like, chances are, if anything, it'll probably be a narrow group that would mean who would be participating past that last day of finals. And many more details about closing and those things will be posted on the housing website as we get closer to checkout. But those were some questions that were being asked. Other questions about internships, Mandy, do the internships apply, opportunities also apply to seniors? So is it only for undergrads, for the folks who haven't graduated, or can seniors take advantage of the internship opportunities?
Yeah, internships, there are certainly internships available to students, but also there are many organizations who will hire recent grads for internships. It might be specific to, is the question about internship funds, the funding?
Right, I think so.
Okay, yeah, so, okay, historically, the funds are, the stipulation is that it's for current Willamette students. When the funds are awarded in June, our seniors are technically alumni. Because of COVID, we have asked the donors last summer if they would consider seniors as well. All of them said yes. We will ask the donors again this year if they will consider our seniors, because many of them didn't get to do internships last summer. I have a feeling that the donors will say yes again. One of them has already said yes, so it's something that we'll be asking for, but I do anticipate that they will be open to our our seniors. They've had a very disrupted opportunities, especially if you look at the typical internship summer, which is junior year. Yeah.
Someone had asked about those 2 dates that Ruth had asked, mentioned that will be for the presentations, and that's April 20th and April 21st are those days on the calendar where that will be taking place. So Rob, a question was about what are the plans for football?
Yeah, and so, you know, when we made the announcement back in December that we would not be competing with the Northwest Conference in football and basketball, and at the time that was because the state of Oregon was not allowing those sports to compete unless you were at Oregon or Oregon State, basically, at Division I. And as frustrated as we were, we made the decision because we didn't want to bring students back early when we did not expect that they would be allowed. That guidance is changing somewhat, and they're starting to open up the possibility, and we are examining if that may be a possibility for us as we get through the spring semester. We're working hard with that, but again, trying to make sure that we are following necessary protocols and we have you know, the ability to do those safely. And so we're hopeful, but we're at the beginning stages of seeing if that will be able to happen for those sports.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Don, there's some details people are wondering about testing,
Sure.
about perhaps like the percentage of random testing and how many people are showing up, and some students are saying that they don't know anyone who's been tested. So could you say a little bit more about?
Sure. So this is, let's see, I'm looking at the calendar now. This is our 3rd week of testing, surveillance testing. We used the first 2 weeks of the semester when students came back to test all 250 of our student athletes. And so we've opened our surveillance testing. We're just in about the middle of our 3rd week now. So the way we're doing this, we're setting aside 2 hours every day from 10 to 12 for our surveillance testing program. And we can run through a couple of dozen tests in a day. So it's possible that your student may not have yet been selected for random testing, but I fully expect that will happen by the end of the semester for sure. The other thing I will also say, if your student is concerned, we do have a little bit of capacity to provide some COVID testing to people who are concerned. So if they feel like they are exposed or just anxious about that, have them give us a call and we'll see what we can do based on our availability that week. The turnaround time, I know there's a couple of questions about why aren't you making this mandatory? So long as our compliance remains pretty high, we're taking a please do your part to protect yourself and your community approach. And so far compliance has really been quite good, especially as students become more familiar with the emails that are coming from my office and not just ignoring them because it's a random email that they get. So we're doing some public messaging about that. And so far, increasingly, even this week, we're seeing a pretty significant uptick in compliance. So happy for that.
Right. Ruth, the question about finals, when will students know their finals schedules?
The final schedule is also published on the registrar's website. And final exams are scheduled according to what time your normal class is. So if students for some reason do not have their final exam day and time on their course syllabus, which professors will frequently do, they can go to the registrar's website and check.
Mm-hmm. There's some questions about, is it too early to speculate if we'll be distancing and masking in the fall and our requirements for vaccines? And I'm happy to address that. And Don, then if you also want to step in. I'm a member of the reopening committee along with Dean Feingold and Don Thomson. And it's something that I think we think is a little too soon to say definitively, but as Don has mentioned, we feel very hopeful with the metrics that are happening, with the plan for, if you're watching the news, you're hearing that by July, there's really a belief that an overwhelming majority of folks across the US, and Oregon being no exception, will have access to the vaccine. Because vaccinations are different state by state, and it's a little wait and see. We're a little hard pressed to say that we would be mandating the vaccine, but we certainly feel encouraged that it will be available. And so we're still talking about those things. And so As Donna said earlier, we're very hopeful that there will be some lessening of restrictions. We're actually even hopeful that we will be able to do that as this semester progresses, but we're cautiously optimistic. I don't know if Donna or Ruth, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I saw a question in the chat about where students should try to get their vaccine. Wherever you are eligible for the vaccine, I think is the right question. So don't wait. If you can find it somewhere and you are eligible for it, and as Dr. Landreman said, the sequencing varies and is set by state. So what is happening in Oregon may not be, I know is not what is happening in California or Texas or Florida or wherever. So check your local health authority. I honestly don't expect the majority of our students to be eligible, of our healthy students to be eligible until summer.
Mm-hmm. Ruth, there's a question about summer school classes. Are any offered, and about the odds of study abroad next fall?
So we have not historically had summer session classes, although this is actually a project that we're working on right now. We have just appointed a associate provost in academic affairs, one of whose tasks is to try and figure out a summer schedule that requires some financial aid, finagling, and other things to try and get it going. But I've long thought that that would be a really good idea for our campus. Also, with the addition of PNCA to our family of colleges, that provides some very interesting opportunities for students in the College of Arts and Sciences to potentially be able to take art classes in Portland using the PNCA facilities over the summer, which is something they would have difficulties doing during the year because of having to travel back and forth. So I don't know if we will have anything by this summer. It is more likely that we would have it the summer after this, but we did do a little pilot program last summer of some remote classes for recent high school graduates, incoming first-year students, to try and make them feel more welcome and part of the Willamette community. We may be doing that again, and we might also open some things up to existing students. So stay tuned on that. I have already forgotten what the second half of the question was. Summer classes
And study abroad.
And study abroad. Do not know about study abroad. Our study abroad capabilities are restricted in part by our partners and also by nations' willingness to let people in. So I think that is just a really big question mark. We want to get back to study abroad as soon as possible. It is a really, really important part of students' education, and I am deeply distraught that there are students who have missed out on that as part of their college career because the period when they would be going has so that's really all I can say about study abroad right now.
Right. There's been some questions about summer storage options. If you're living on campus and planning on staying on campus, you have a 2-box limit of what could be stored. A bicycle does not count. We don't store bikes, but it could be a mini fridge in a box, or it could be 2 boxes appropriately labeled. And again, your student will receive all the kind of information about the hours and how that works in the coming weeks. Rob, there's a question about will there be athletics after May 9th? And if so, will they be allowed housing?
I saw that question, and that's a really great question, and something that I need to address with our Director of Residence Life, Scott Etherton. Typically, in those situations when students are required to be on campus after the residence halls would close for any type of activity, whether it's staying to help with commencement or athletics, we do allow that, and I will address that and let those impacted know. We do have some contests scheduled right now, specifically in track and field for after that date. So.
And I do believe the likelihood is that if we are sponsoring them, it is very likely that we would be able to house them through that period. Ruth, I'm wondering if this is for you, about when we know the Tokyo International University coming back to Willamette.
So we are actively engaged in discussions with TIU about the restart of the American Studies program. We are tentatively hoping to have American Studies program students back on campus next spring. It's possible that they would be delayed until the following fall. TIU is interested in modifying the program somewhat from what they've had in past. So previous years, we have always had students start in our spring and then continue on through our fall. Japan is actually altering their school year to line up with the academic year that we have, so that we would have some students here for the full year, fall to spring, some students only for a single semester. And they're aiming to have their students integrate more fully into the academics of the College of Arts and Sciences by sending over students who have a slightly higher level of English proficiency already. As before, the students would be fully integrated with student activities, sports, residence life, etc. So really hoping it can be spring of 22, possibly as late as fall of 22.
Rob, there's some questions about the Northwest Conference's policy not to require masks and in some sports. If you could comment about how that came about and our response, and
Yeah.
Don and I can also chime in as appropriate.
Totally fine, totally fine. And so yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we've been doing and in connection with the athletic directors and then through the President's Council of the Northwest Conference is looking at the data. And the NCAA has spent a lot of time, looking at transmission rates for sports that were active. One of the things that's been helpful for us, and not playing in the fall, and there've been people that they've been able to take a look at where is the spread happening and what they found. And we listen to reports from Dr. Hainline, who's the medical advisor for the NCAA, every week. And he actually said it again this morning. What they found was that transmission, especially outdoors, is not happening during competition. And it's actually more dangerous for folks to be at full exertion in those sports if they were to be masked. And the transmission is happening, when they're traveling, if they're too packed, if they're doing meals, and they're in the same space and they're too close in those situations. Those are the areas where there's more danger. And so we're taking precautions in those areas and not allowing teams to eat, not eat on buses, not eat in an enclosed space. Other teams, when they travel here, are coming ready to play. So they're not going into our facilities if they're an outdoor sport. I think one of the good things for us, again, as we did not play this fall, is we were able to learn a lot about what happens with, when teams are playing sports and base our protocols along with, again, our conference protocols and what the NCAA is saying on the data that we have available. So I don't know if that makes sense, or Don, if there's anything else you want to add with that, but.
I think you did great, Rob. Thanks.
Right. Ruth, this might be related to the not so much study abroad, but what is the likelihood of my student going overseas this summer for their field study for archaeology?
We don't know what's going on with the Vanessa Brodgar yet. In part, we don't know if the dig is going to be open. The dig itself was closed down last summer. That is a high priority program. It is a extremely rare opportunity that we are able to offer that. That is, we are the only university in North America that offers students the opportunity to work at the Vanessa Brodgar. And we have not only our own students, but students, undergraduates and graduates from across the country coming to the Willamette program to be able to participate in that dig. If it is possible to do it, we will do it. I don't know when we will learn when it's possible to do it. So that's all I can say is stay tuned with that. Scott Pike, who's the director of our participation in that program, is the best contact point for this, and he will let archaeology majors and other students who have expressed their interest know about this as soon as he does.
There's some questions about selection of housing. And on this call, our director of housing isn't on the call, but we're anticipating for our next call, he will, because it will be right around the time that students will be selecting housing, which is in April. And we will also have more information in the parent and family newsletter and on the housing website. So I think those dates are, and it may already be there. I didn't check before this call, but that is where that information will be, and your student will get plenty of information about it, but it begins in April.
All right, I think we're starting to run a little low on time, so maybe one or two more questions.
I'm taking a look. There's a question about the Kaneko Commons. It won't be open this year, and mostly just because of our, again, the TIUA is not on campus, and as well as just the occupancy of Kaneko, and so it just wasn't cost effective for us to have the Commons open right now. And I think we look forward to, I have not eaten there yet myself because I started in July, and so I'm looking forward to it myself. But it won't be open for this academic year, with hopefully soon to be open. There's a question about Mandy, about internships. Are all internships remote, or will students be able to travel to places like DC or New York City for internships? What do you know about that?
Yeah, it depends on the employer site. So from the Willamette perspective, what we make sure that there's guidelines around is if students are earning academic credit for their internship, the employer site actually has to just acknowledge that they are keeping our students safe and following some COVID protocol. So they have to say, what they're doing as an organization. But some students want to have remote or virtual internships, and we can help them find them. Some are wanting to travel and do other things. So it depends on the organization. A lot of places are right now anticipating in person, but may start remotely. Especially, Don kind of talked about that July date, things feeling a little bit more open. So I think a lot of our employers are very hopeful to have in-person internships, but at this point have learned how to manage an effective remote internship as well. So I would say it just kind of depends right now. I think a lot of them are hopeful. A lot of them are anticipating, even if the student travels a little later than they typically would to be able to have them on site at some point.
Mm-hmm. And Mandy, probably this last question, is there a way for parents to obtain guest access to Handshake to better understand summer internship opportunities for their student, or to support them in that search?
We don't typically, Handshake is students and alumni, but if there are, Handshake is great. It's not the only place to help a student search for internships. I think if there's a parent who wants some support with that, I'd be happy to help them do a more holistic internship search for their student. I think one of the best resources would be our career community pages. There's a lot of various access to professional associations that are more, like I would tell your student, they're more honed in. So Handshake has great opportunities. I would just work with a parent to have a holistic search. There are opportunities for parents, especially those of you who hire interns, to join Woo Connect and offer any advice and insight in terms of your industry or internships that you may offer that way. So there's more opportunities on that side for parents to engage with students in their career development.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, great. I think that's I think probably all the questions that we have time for. And if there are questions that were left unanswered, we will do our best to answer them. Also know, I think soon the parent and family newsletter will be coming out that will have lots of information. And also know that at any time you're welcome to reach out to anyone you see on this panel, or just at Willamette in general. We'd be happy to talk to you to help you be a great partner for your student, or if you have questions about the experience or concerns about the experience that they're having. But I do believe that we have persevered the worst of what has been in front of us. We've done it together as a community, and I'm thrilled that you could be here tonight to hear a lot of the great things, excuse me, that are happening.
Well, thanks very much, Lisa, and all of our panelists this evening for sharing these updates with us today. Hopefully our audience found this valuable and informative. To all of you, thanks again for joining us this evening. If you would like to reach out to a specific administrator from this evening's session, we will follow up with contact information and short survey by email tomorrow. So thanks again, and take care, everyone.